Oh my gosh, we are sitting down for the 100th episode of Rewildology. I cannot believe this is happening right now. And we have such a fun episode planned. This is Plan C.
Totally.
C of this episode. Plan A was freaking epic. You and Kayla, who's been on the podcast now multiple times, both of you were to come over. We were going to have, we're going to grill out, we're going to have cocktails, and then we were going to record this episode in the mountains up here. But a snowstorm decided that was not going to be feasible, which is A-okay. So then Plan B also didn't work out. So we're to Plan C. But you know what? That's awesome. That's a beautiful thing about this show is we have to be really flexible, and even for something like this. So, but awesome. I'm so excited today. And so kind of what we have planned, everybody, is we asked you your questions to submit your questions for today. And Heather, amazing Heather, our audio and video producer, she's going to ask them to me. And then I also have some questions for her. And then we're just going to talk about the future and everything this show has meant. So yeah, thanks everybody for being a part of the show, for being here with me, for being here with Heather too. So we are just super excited, right, Heather? Cheers to you right now.
Cheers to you. Oh, Plan C, I only have self here today. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Heather Valley. A lot of you probably haven't heard of me or even know I'm working behind the scenes here. But yes, I do all of the audio editing and help with some of the video stuff. And moving forward, which we'll talk about later, there'll be a lot more video stuff. But let's start off, Brooke, with the first question. So what is the story behind Rewildology? Like, why did you create it? How did it come to be?
Yeah, this is such an interesting story, I think, just because it just freaking happened, So it's a lot of layers. So for anyone who hasn't heard my story, maybe you're new to the show, which again, welcome. I'm so excited that you're part of the Rewildology community. But if you haven't heard my story, so I am a trained conservation biologist. And my last company that I worked for was called Natural Habitat Adventures, which is this amazing worldwide conservation travel company. And I worked for them for a while, and I used to host these things there called the Conservation Coffee Talks, where I would bring in somebody from either within the community somewhere, like a conservation community, or within the office, and they would give these monthly talks, and everyone just raved about them. They were their favorite thing of the month, and it really brought them closer with the story of conservation. So that was great. So that was one of the first seeds to this show. And then COVID happened. And like a lot of us in conservation and or travel, or me in both, most companies had to make a huge cut. And so when that cut happened, I was unfortunately a part of that. And my entire department was also lost. So a lot of us were really heavily affected, as I'm sure lots of people listening to in one way or another was affected by COVID. And so after that, I had to put on my big girl pants. Well, first I went home and drank like 3 glasses of wine because I'm just... It was 1 week after my wedding. I had just been back in the office for maybe 3 or 4 days. And then I was pulled into a room and told I lost my job. So, and I put everything into this career. Like that, it was one of those jobs where you thought you were going to be there for the rest of your life. Like, this is like my family. This is my community. This company means so much to me. And I put all of my effort and my work into this job. And so when it was taken away from me through no doing of my own, I was devastated. I guess there really is no other way to put it. I so much of my identity was wrapped up in this role and this title that I created through the company that when that was taken away from me, I lost a big part of who I was. And maybe some other people, like I said, you've gone through that, but being a very passionate person, as I am, I'm sure some people have picked up on that by now, but a very passionate person. So to have this big part of me taken away was really big. So, but my parents, they were really good at raising very independent girls. And, if come hell or high water, you have bills to pay. And so you got to make ends meet. So the next day, like I said, I put on my big girl pants and I started to look for other jobs. And the only thing that I could find was for this real estate startup in Denver. And they just needed somebody that was good with people. I'm like, yo, I am so good with people. I've been doing all of my life. I can help build you pretty much what you need, what you're looking for when it comes to like customer experience type stuff. So this was like the next big phase on where this show started to come to be. So in two ways that are polar opposites. One, the founders of this company are younger than me. They're these awesome guys that are just super ambitious. And I've never had been around that mindset before. So this was a big thing. I never been around people who were young and ambitious, and they just wanted to make it happen. They made things out of thin air that didn't exist before. And I never been around that before, because I feel like that mindset is very lacking in conservation for a lot of different reasons. And so I never been exposed to it before, because, it's always like knocking on doors and being told no. If I could have $1 for every time I was told no in my career, I would be a freaking millionaire. I swear to God. But being around them, there was no person to say no. Like, they were the ones and they created it. I'm like, wow, this is amazing to be around. They just created this thing out of nowhere. This is awesome. And then because it was real estate, it wasn't conservation. It wasn't my passion. It wasn't contributing to the world. And so there was a big part of me that was missing. And so between those combined, between being around these people that are super inspiring, like I said, they were younger than me. They were bulldozing and making this thing a reality, this startup, and me having a big void in my heart, this idea for this podcast started to come to be. And then the final moment was I sat down and watched David Attenborough's documentary that he made on his life, where it's like A Life on This Planet or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about.
It's so good. Yeah.
My God, I'm not an emotional person. I very rarely cry. Like, I probably should cry more than I do. It's kind of ridiculous. I might have a problem. But I bawled my eyes out during that documentary. I was just sitting on the couch and just the face. And I was already starting to have this longing in my heart that I wasn't pursuing what I was put on this planet to do. And I just looked over at my husband and I just said, what the am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing here? So the seeds for the podcast had already been planted. I love podcasts. I've been listening to them for a very, very long time, and hosting those conservation coffee talks. Some of my coworkers had actually started to plant the seed to do something similar as well, like a YouTube channel or something. Like, why aren't you actually recording these and doing something more with them? So with all of that combined, the next day I reached out to my boss and I was like, hey, I'm going to go down to part-time. You need me to go to part-time because we were starting the slow season. My entire team was in the Philippines, so I was significantly more expensive than them with my salary. It's like, you need me to go to part-time. I'm going to figure out how to build this. And then from that day forward, I just figured it out. I watched every single YouTube channel you can possibly imagine, every single Google search you can think of. And I taught myself how to put a podcast together. And then it was December 2020. I just started with my network. I was like, because, I've been a conservation biologist now for a while, and I had some really strong contacts. And I was like, if I completely blow this up, these people love me and they won't care if I mess this up royally. It'll only be a couple hours of their time. It'll be fine. And so that was December 2020. I sat down with 7 of my close conservation friends and I recorded episodes with them. And then I launched January 23rd, 2021. And now, Heather, you and I are sitting down recording the 100th episode. 100th episode. I can't imagine that. I'm a biologist. I'm a conservation biologist. I'm trained as a scientist. And yet this whole thing has come together since then. And this is the most rewarding thing I've ever done, which is kind of funny. It's not a name on a paper. It's not a title. It's building this beautiful community and sharing these voices, the most inspiring people I have ever met. I feel like I've done nothing compared to most of the guests that have been on. I'm like, nothing. I've done nothing compared to you. You are changing the world, the globe. And
you're giving them voice. You're giving them a voice, right?
Yes.
A lot of these people, especially in some of these third world countries, nobody would know what they were doing unless you asked them. So, stop that.
I know. I definitely do too. Sometimes people tell me I'm too humble. I can't help it. But yeah. And then that was another thing, since I am a conservation travel specialist that's my job. So that is what I've decided to do with my career as a way to contribute to a conservation and just keeping our wildlife here is through conservation tourism. And I've been to so many places around the world, and I kept meeting these people, just like you said, that needed their story told. I was like, why am I the only person that is hearing what you're doing right now? That's not fair. You should be the person that everybody hears and knows and celebrates. It's not that person that's on some documentary or some crazy reality TV. It needs to be you. So that was another big motivation, is just, gosh, people are so inspiring everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was all of these things combined. And then one last thing, one more reason why this show exists is nobody can take it away from me. The only way that this show is going to stop is if I press the stop button. And so there comes a lot of responsibility and weight with that, which is totally fine. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. But unlike my former career, no one can take this platform away. And I love that. I love that so much. The only person I have to ask, should I do this or not, is myself. To be like, Heather, should I do this or not? Like help me through my own thought process. Because I'm never gonna know what I should do. But yeah, so that's all the things. That is why Rewildology exists.
Well, that's such a good story. And you've done such an amazing job when I came on, and kind of like trying to get my head wrapped around where you were at and what you were doing. I was like, wow, she has done a lot. I don't know how you did it all by yourself without help. So good for you.
I think this is actually the perfect time then. Let's actually tell everybody how we met. So Heather, from your perspective, tell everybody how you and I met.
Okay. So I was going to Rocky Mountain National Park with another photographer named Christy Odom, who's in the International League of Conservation Photographers. And she's doing a short film on pikas. And so I was helping her out with the audio and any gear stuff. And so we were waiting for the Pike Patrol people from the Denver Zoo to show up. And this car pulls up and this girl gets out and she walks straight up to me and she goes, "Hi, I'm Brooke." I'm like, one not to ever be rude. I was like, "Hi, I'm Heather." And I think we talked for just a couple minutes and we knew we wanted to work together. So it was one of those moments that happens one or two times in your life. It's really cool.
It was.
And we work together really well and we're friends and it's great.
Yeah. It was, because just after that, it was so funny where I was like, Heather, I swear to God, I manifested you. And look, I swear to God, I manifested you.
Yeah. Because I've been wanting to do some video stuff, but didn't have a host, and you wanted to do some video stuff as a host, but you didn't have a video person. So
yeah.
There we go. And my background's in audio, so it just all kind of worked out. So
it's couldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah, it's super
perfect. And then that was August. So we are sitting down and recording this the very end of October, and this episode is going to be released beginning of November. So yeah, we met, and then like right off the bat, we were like, let's work together. And so
yeah, it was cool how it all just fell together. So yeah, super awesome. Are you ready for another question?
Yeah,
ready for the big one?
Let's go for the big question.
Okay, this question is from Adrian Figueroa. We featured him a couple weeks ago, and his question was, what are your thoughts on trophic rewilding? In other words, do you think there is value in introducing a living relative of a now extinct species to restore ecosystem services that the extinct species once provided? Ooh, the pressure's on, Brooke.
I know. And Adrian,
good question, Adrian.
Oh my God, such a good question. Well, one, thank you, Adrian, for being our first featured rewildologist. That is awesome that you were like, I want to do it. And then ever since then, we've talked so much on Instagram. You are an amazing person, Adrian. And then you were the first person to like this question. I did not anticipate this at all, but thank you because you let me put on my nerd cap and just like, okay, let's actually look deep into this question. So when I first started to think about this, I was like, okay, trophic rewilding. Obviously, the show's called Rewildology. I've done a lot of episodes on what rewilding is, what it isn't. And then I've had some guests on that are experts in various ways of this concept. So I'm like, okay, pretty confident I know what the concept is. And then I had to read this question like 10 times because there's a lot of layers to it. So of course, like, there's the question, what are your thoughts on trophic rewilding? That's one, but it goes way deeper than that. And it's like, do you think there is value in introducing a living relative, so an extant species of a now extinct species, to restore ecosystem services? And because at first I was like, man, I just wish we could be a purist. Like, no, like we shouldn't be introducing other species in order to restore this stuff because it isn't, like there's other things that could happen. But I was like, okay, but we are now living in the biodiversity crisis. There are so many other layers to this that where we can't be purists anymore. Like this isn't, we've gone
true.
Yeah. Past the point of no return. So what I started to do is I was thinking more and more of this as any good scientist. I turned to the scientific literature. I'm like, well, I'm not an expert on this, but I know there's experts out there on this. So I found two incredible papers, and I'll make sure that these are linked in the show notes, and I highly recommend everybody checking them out. So the first one is called Trophic Rewilding, Impact on Ecosystems Under Global Change by, I think it's Baker, Bakker, and Svenning. So this really opened my eyes to this idea. And one of the it's in section 6, which animals to introduce where in trophic rewilding. And the biggest takeaway that I come to find, just reading the whole thing, my translation of what it was, is that it really depends on the ecosystem services that you need to be back into the system. And then also one of the biggest factors, which I didn't even think about that this is like a whole other layer to this question, is we have to look at the factors in the future because we know the climate is still going to change, which is going to be pretty hard to predict. So if we are reintroducing or introducing a living relative of an extinct species, what are the other factors that this species is now going to be subject to that they aren't in their current ecosystem where they evolved? So these scientists, it was more like a review. It was like a culmination of a whole bunch of papers, which was really interesting. So there was this study where they looked at 17 megafauna that are mammalian. So, they control their own body regulation stuff. Like they can control their temperature, everything. They're pretty resilient. So you're thinking of your bison, your elephants, like your mega fauna, your big herbivores. They're pretty resilient. So there isn't as many factors that need to go into play if we're introducing those type of species to be able to put in ecosystem services that are gone. But the interesting question, and once I started getting into the literature, Adrienne, I know why you asked this question, is because ectotherms, so those are animals that can't regulate their own body temperature that much. Some of them can to a point. But, that's when you're thinking of your snakes, like your reptiles, like these animals that are more subject to the environment in order for them to regulate their own body temperatures. So one of the big experiments that's been going on that has been pretty successful in a lot of areas is with tortoises. And Adrienne, he said he's the gopher tortoise. So I was like, you've probably read this a million times, which is why this question came to be. So in a lot of islands, a lot of giant tortoises are extinct. And so scientists are using living relatives and putting them into these ecosystems in order to restore what the extinct species did. Because in a lot of these areas, they were the big herbivores. They are the seed dispersers. And by putting these tortoises in these areas, then they are restoring that role, that very important role for islands. So I guess this all comes down to, just like you said, the circumstance and the situation. So there's this other paper that I found called Science for Wilder and
Tongue twister there, yeah.
Anthropocene. Oh my gosh. Synthesis
Okay. All right. Try it one more time.
for a wilder Anthropocene. Anthropocene. Synthesis and future directions for trophic rewilding research. And this was by the same, so the second author in the first paper, it's by him and et al. So the first paper was 2018, this one is 2015. So this one had some fantastic examples of using other big herbivores to restore ecosystem services. And this one, some of them was accidental, but some of them was even before the term rewilding happened. Like, for example, there was these primitive cattle that were restored in Netherlands in 1983 that were introduced as proxies for their extirpated wild ancestors, along with red deer. And it had an amazing cascade of effects where this very endangered but keystone species geese was able to get their habitat back because these cattle were reintroduced to the areas. And the list goes on and on and on of like similar reintroductions where technically the species that was introduced is not the original, but it was filling the same ecosystem service. And because of that, a lot of these ecosystems are starting to be restored. And it seems like some of the biggest factors are how close a relative, like how closely related the living species is to the one that was extinct and how long that extinct species has been gone. So that there's also climate, biodiversity impacts, public acceptance it has here, and blah, 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 blah. So just like you said, just like before I let it go on this big spiel and looking at all of these papers and everything like that, it depends.
It depends. Yes.
Also, there was one last thing that I thought was wild. And I don't know why I think it's so wild because everything is just getting all like with crypts or, all this stuff that's happening genetically that I guess I need to look more into these papers because this is the first time I've heard of this, where they're starting to do genetic modifications on living species so that they then have the same characteristics as the extinct species, so that when they are reintroduced into these ecosystems, a lot of the issues that scientists are running into with these species that evolve these ecosystems, that's going to be gone because they're going to be genetically modified to be perfect for these ecosystems.
Oh, how do you feel about that?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's such like a.
I don't know.
Seems like such a Pandora's box or something. I don't know, but
humans have been playing God for a long time.
I know. Look where it's got us.
Exactly. So I've not heard of this before, of genetic modification to create species to replace extinct species. I've just heard of people just trying to bring back the mammoth or something like that from the DNA and like whatnot. I mean, that just seems like a waste of money. But this is interesting. So that is also specifically listed for anybody that's interested in a second paper, and it's underneath integrating synthetic biology and rewilding.
I'm going to read that one. That sounds super, super interesting. Yeah.
I had to make sure I threw that in there because I was like, what? I did not see that coming. I did not. Because that's one of the big things that they're running into with like this tortoise reintroduction. Since these tortoises aren't perfect for these ecosystems, then like, for example, if the ecosystem is drier than where these tortoises came from, then they're not able to necessarily thrive or live through the dry season. So what humans are having to interfere in some way, shape, or form.
So technically what we're doing is shortcutting the evolution of them evolving in a certain environment for thousands of years. We're just shortcutting it. But damn. Yeah.
Coming. So I was like, well, I got to throw that out there for everyone to just ponder on, that scientists are now starting to make species that fill the niche of extinct species. So we'll see what happens. I mean, this is something to definitely watch. And again, if anybody is interested in trophic rewilding, these papers aren't difficult to read because, some of them I'm just like, oh, what did you just say? It takes like 10 hours to translate what the heck the scientist just said. I'm like, you can use simpler language than that. This is kind of ridiculous, But these two papers are fantastic. They're very easy reads, very easy to understand. You don't have to have a hardcore science background like I do, or some of the PhDs or people listening. Like I promise that you can understand them as well. But yes, Adrian, thank you for that question. I hope that gave kind of my opinion, kind of not. I guess it just depends. It depends on what needs restored. I'm personally a predator biologist, and in trophic rewilding, it's usually for the top-down cascades is what it's usually focusing. So trophic rewilding is heavily focused on restoring top like apex predators and stuff like that. So I don't think that this is really applicable that much. I don't understand. Like, I can't see how you would reintroduce another apex predator to an area that they're not native. So that's something I would have to ponder on and think more of. Like for a polar bear, there's nothing you can reintroduce that would, place a polar bear's, like nothing else can survive there. Like the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
not going to put a black bear there and he's all of a sudden going to learn how to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something can't replace what a tiger can do,
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's people are pushing what conservation means anymore. Like the big reintroduction of cheetahs into where India, they brought African cheetahs to India because they were able to get a viable Asian population. There's only like 100 Iranian cheetahs left. And so they brought Africans. And so African cheetahs. So we have a whole episode about that. I definitely recommend. I'll put that in the show notes. I should have what episode? Where Stotra came on the show, and he's a Asian, like an Asiatic lion expert. It's very heavily connected in the Indian cat world. So he was able to answer my questions. But so, yeah, I mean, we're pushing a little. Apparently we're making species now that don't exist, and we are reintroducing cats that are technically the same cat. They're both cheetahs, but one's African versus Asian and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. People are getting creative and we're doing weird and funky things, but I guess we got to try because.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's heart, I think, is in the right place. It's just, Wild West right now, trying to figure out how to manage biodiversity and climate change and all this extinction. And it's just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm all for creative solutions. I mean, and they're not going to be without controversy, but we're to the point now where we got to try pretty much anything. So,
yeah. All right. Okay. On a lighter note.
Yeah.
We have our third question is from Tropical Tropics 95. What animal would you all like to learn more about that you haven't been able to do an episode on? I bet I can guess for you.
I think everyone can guess. Selfishly, I'm a predator freak. I love all predators. So if I could have all of the big cats on, or anyone who is, especially the felids, I love them so much. I nerd out so hard. So selfishly, that's me. But I'm also a very curious person. And anybody who's passionate about something, I get completely absorbed. I mean, there's species on here that I literally didn't even know existed until they came on the show. But there's
like the freshwater dolphins.
Yeah, the Ganges.
So cool. Yeah.
And like Irorotanshi from Nigeria, she is like an unbelievable bat biologist and like rediscovered hadn't been found in like so many years. Like she rediscovered them, and just listening to her passion was incredible. So I'm not that biased. If someone has an amazing species that they love, I want all of them on. And then also, I don't know if you listening have put this together, but one of the big goals of this show is to have somebody working in every single country for conservation, have them on the show. So that is a big goal of mine. So to have literally as many voices from as many places on the world, like throughout the world, is one of my goals. So I'm not even close. I think we're up to, there's a lot of episodes that haven't been released yet that are recorded, but we're well over 30 countries now. And most of which are local people that work there. That's another big goal of mine. It's not always possible. I'm striving very, very hard to get, local researchers and local scientists And that's always a big part of what I'm striving for as well, to get the, get the local voices, especially women voices as well. But yeah, that's a big picture. So 30 countries is not the world. So
we got work to do.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go. So if anyone listening, if you work in a country that hasn't been on the show, reach out, because we need your voice on the show, because we need to get the globe covered.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For me, it's all the canids.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So me and Heather have talked about, since the Lynx is me, obviously the Rewildology logo, about getting a wild dog version made for Heather. And I absolutely love wild dogs. So I'm like all friggin' game for it. It's on the to-do list. It'll happen.
Yeah. Our long to-do list.
Our long to-do list, but it'll be great when we get that done.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Question number 4. Lori Evans Photography. This is a good question. Well, they've all been good questions, but I like this one. If you could relive only one wildlife encounter or experience, what would it be, and what emotion did it evoke?
This is a great question.
It's like a fun one to answer, Yeah,
because it made me really reflect and really think about, because I've been so blessed now with just the career I've chosen in my life to see a lot of incredible things. And honestly, well, it's not the most sexy or crazy or anything. I think the sighting I would love to go back and do again is the first time I saw a wild tiger. Because
that's pretty sexy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey,
I'm like, you shut up. That's pretty sexy. Well, tiger is awesome. Okay.
Okay, maybe you're right. You're totally right.
I thought you were gonna say like skunk or something like totally not sexy, right? But cool, still cool nonetheless. But
they do have a couple sightings I do want to mention after this. But that tiger sighting meant so much to me. It meant more than just seeing that tiger. So the story behind this sighting is it was my third Earth expedition. So it was my final trip that I had made with my graduate program. And then my boss now, who I work for, I actually partnered with him. I didn't work for him at the time. This was 2017, with creating a post-research safari in India with his partners. And so this is the worst time of the year to go see tigers. Like we weren't supposed to see anything. Like it just, if you happen to, just count your blessings and go buy a lottery ticket, because this is not the time of year to go see tigers. But, I was like, we're here in India. It's so long to get there. Let's go to a couple parks and see what we can find. And so we were in the southern part of India, and it was Nagarhole National Park. And our Tiger Reserve, Nagarhole Tiger Reserve, I'm sorry. And it was our first game drive. And we just came around this bend and onto this water hole. And right there, for the first time ever in my life, was a tiger. And I almost broke down in tears, because everything that I had been striving for all of my life, finally in that moment, like I finally saw a tiger in the wild. Like everything I'd done, my entire master's, all of my undergrad, everything had culminated into this moment where I'm actually seeing what I was trying so hard to protect finally in the wild. And we were with that cat for like 45 minutes, because it just eaten. It was at its watering hole. It did not care. It was just such a cat. and I mean, people obviously don't know that I actually have a lot of tattoos. I'm pretty tatted up, which that surprises a lot of people, which can't judge a book by its cover. But one of my tattoos is actually a beautiful tiger. And I got that when I graduated undergrad, as like one of the things closest in my heart that I want to save, that I want to spend the rest of my life protecting. And then to see it in the wild for the first time, like, oh, I think it was so kind.
This sounds so awesome. Like, how amazing was that? I bet.
God, Oh my gosh, I literally might start crying. But yeah, so I think that moment, just because it meant so much personally. And so like a couple of my sexier sightings that I will say that also meant a lot. And these were actually on the same trip. So one was in the Makati salt pans, which is in Botswana. So it's outside the Kalahari. And I was with this beautiful desert adapted lioness. And she is the biggest freaking lion I've ever seen in my life. She was massive. The locals called her Big Head for perspective. Right. She was such a beast that it was literally her and her three cubs. And her cubs were as big as a lot of the other lions that I had seen across like Eastern Africa or something like that. So she was beautiful. And then on that night, we actually got to see her teaching her cubs how to hunt a wildebeest.
Oh my gosh.
No,
I'm jealous. That sounds amazing.
it was
Yeah.
phenomenal. It was phenomenal just watching all the chaos and her showing them how to stalk and then letting them try and everything, just watching how they communicate with each other, which is so different than what we do. So just watching this beautiful behavior was just incredible. And then towards the end of that trip, so I was in a different part of Botswana. And I got to be with a wild dog pack. And
I know you told me about that. That sounds so magical.
yes,
Yeah.
this particular pack, we were with them all evening. It was 11 adults and 14 puppies. And
Oh, how cool.
so many puppies. And then it was time to hunt. And so for 2.5 hours, we were with them as they were just going through the bush, chasing everything down. And then they did eventually, they were relentless. Like wild dogs are relentless. Like they didn't stop until they took something down. So they took down an impala. And yeah, that was absolutely incredible. And then after eating for a while, they called the puppies and we were there and like all the puppies came tramping through like the big grass and everything. So that was just, and then also too, like being like a predator specialist, like to see these interactions, to see these wild dogs, like that is so, so special. So to spend an entire evening with them was phenomenal. And I would love to relive that. I've actually posted like a couple of the puppy videos. And so have more. I should probably post them more often.
Yeah, we should definitely post them. That's so cool. I bet just watching them interact and communicate with each other and work together was just so amazing. I mean, I've seen videos of it in documentaries, but to actually see it in person would be amazing.
Girl, we're going to, because you're with me now. So guess what?
Hey,
You're going to see all the things. But okay, so those were all of the questions. Now, I want to formally introduce Heather, because this is the first time your voice has been on the show, even though now for many episodes you have had a very big hand in. So tell everybody, what is your background and why are you doing conservation now?
okay. Well, so I worked in the video game industry for 20 plus years as a sound designer, a composer, an audio director. I was a producer for a couple of years. I worked with Microsoft and Sony and some smaller studios, and then did a couple games for Electronic Arts. And then the last company I was with for almost 10 years was a casino game company. We did like slot machines, and we did do some of those that go ding, 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 but we also did some that were way more complicated, with a lot of original music, original sound effects. We even did some licensed games, which meant that we had to recreate some of these famous songs and make them sound as close as possible. So it was fun work, but I always just felt like I was contributing to the problem and not the solution, of keeping people indoors and keeping them not aware of what's going on outside. And then it was also hard just spending all that time in the office. The last job I was at, we did a lot of field trips to casinos. And that was really hard for me, watching a bunch of people that, you did see a lot of people who were just having fun, like going on a trip to Las Vegas. But you did see a lot of people that were obviously spending their retirement checks at the machines. And I just didn't want to be part of that. In 2015, I had the awesome fortune to go to the Galapagos Islands with Natural Habitat Adventures, which you mentioned earlier. And it was a trip of a lifetime. And it just kind of opened up my eyes, like that I was kind of doing the wrong thing. You know, I was like, okay, I need to kind of reevaluate what I'm doing. So I got super into photography, super into wildlife photography. And about a year ago, I was able to quit my job at the casino company. And now I've been working on towards doing freelance conservation media. I'm working with Brooke doing the audio and the video, and I'm really loving that. And then, you know, I'm still doing conservation photography and working on some films and just trying to figure out how that all works. You know, the first year or two after you change directions is always a little rough, but I'm excited, and I feel like I'm heading in the right direction. One other thing I did also is I got my Master Naturalist certification in Texas, which was like over 100 hours of training. And then I put in over 500 hours of volunteer work with different environmental groups in the Texas area while I was living there. And that's been invaluable. Like, I feel like, you know, I may not always be able to understand what all the scientists are saying, but I can keep up at least. So it's been really helpful. And it really made me appreciate nature even more, because I know what plants I'm looking at. I know what animals I'm looking at.
And one thing that I love about your story is, one, it's so full of passion, of course, which it obviously resonates with me. And you have such a winding way to conservation. Like, you've done it in such an unorthodox way, which is beautiful. And a lot of people on the show have as well. And so just sharing more of those stories, that you don't have to just be a PhD in order to make a difference for the world. Like, look what you're doing now. You're doing so many amazing things, like 500 hours of volunteer work. Like, what? That is incredible. Like, that's on top of your crazy, like, you were a director, like you had a lot going on. Like, it's not like you had a little role at any of your jobs that you've had. You had a lot on your plate. So, and then also too, like, you, another reason why I'm so glad that you're part of the show, like, you're helping keeping me in line, because sometimes I just go down rabbit holes and you're like, okay, Brooke, like, can you explain that? Like, what did you just, you know, so you're really helping me a lot with that too, which I absolutely appreciate. So,
well, that's funny, because I always just felt like I was just like, maybe I'm not paying attention. Maybe I need to ask her to explain that.
I don't know, sometimes, you know, just like, wow, yeah, that should probably be explained a little further. Whoops. So, but you know, just things like that. And then also, like, and that just like brings me to the next topic that I really want to discuss, and that's the future. You know, 100 episodes. One, I had no clue that the show would ever get this far, but now that it's everything. I absolutely love this show and don't want it to stop at all. So now it's like looking towards the future. And one of the big things that Heather and I have talked a lot about is we're going to start doing a whole bunch more video content, which is going to be very, very exciting. Hope to do more interviews in the field, which would be, interviews in person are already like a gazillion times better. But then also have it in these crazy places, like even here, like where I live now, you know, you can come up with me and we can do all this kind of stuff. So if you're not already following the YouTube channel, like, please do. I knew from the very beginning when I set this up that setting up a YouTube channel was smart, but I had no capacity to build it. Again, like I said, me and Heather, we manifested each other. And so that's going to be one of our big focuses. Of course, this podcast will always stay as it is, meaning like there will always be the podcast stream, but we are going to create a lot more video content for all of you to just consume and hopefully enjoy. And that's on the social media, that's on YouTube, that's on pretty much any platform that has a visual platform.
We're also talking about making the podcast a little bit more visually interesting in the future too. So if you do happen to listen to the podcast on YouTube, we're going to start trying to make them a little bit more visually interesting, like having live interviews, where everyone's at the same place and And we've done a little bit with the slideshow on the lemur, the
Yeah.
last lemur episode, which I thought was super cool. And it was done in a way too that, if you're not listening on YouTube, you can go back and check it out, but she explained it well enough that it was cool. Yeah, I liked that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sitting down with Butch and him able to like talk us through the rhino reintroductions. And that was the first time we had tried that. And so it's all been a big experiment, but it's been super fun to see this continue to grow and evolve because, oh my God, I can't be stagnant. Oh my gosh, I get so freaking bored. Can you imagine me just doing the same thing every day?
Yeah.
Oh, it would not be.
Yeah. I'm the same way. So, we'll keep each other honest on that one.
Yes, absolutely. And then a couple other big things that we've talked a lot about is, oh my gosh, actually, I'm thinking of all the big things we've talked a lot about. So probably,
I don't think we have that long to talk.
So the biggest thing, and I've planted the seed a couple times, but everyone, I'm absolutely serious. We are actually going to start running trips. We are going to start running Rewildology trips. I can't quite yet share where the first destinations are going to be, but there are at least 3 that I'm currently working on that might be expanding. So we are going to put together formal trips, and then you all will be the first to know, and you will be more than welcome to come join us in these amazing, amazing destinations. And it'll be like this, like I've been in the conservation travel community now and in the industry for a while. And trust me, it'll just be so much fun. We'll have a freaking blast in these destinations, but it'll be these very wild, beautiful places.
Well, and then also getting to talk to conservation professionals, right? While we're out there, which that to me is magic. It's one thing to go see a beautiful animal, but then it's also another thing to get to meet the people who are working with them because they can tell you things about these animals that you would have never known and you wouldn't have found out on YouTube or on the internet or in a book. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that was one of the initial goals of setting up this podcast is making very special partnerships with some of the guests and then bringing the Rewildology community to meet them and see their work and see what they're actually doing on the ground. And I'm so excited to share, everyone, that is actually starting to happen. That is really coming true. So when the first destinations are going to be announced, we will let you know. But 2023, we're going to be in the air. And we want to take you with us and meet these people and just see these incredible projects and just beautiful places around the world. And then also know that you're doing it the right way. Because if you're coming with me, if you're coming with the show, then nothing other than conservation minded positive net impact is going to be allowed. Like that's it. So if you do come with us, then you will have an incredible experience knowing that you are helping protect wildlife. So
you'll be able to see us do the interviews right there. So you'll be a front row seat. So it'll be awesome.
Yeah, I could be part of episodes. Like, how freaking cool will that be? Especially video components. Because like I said, we got an audio and video producer now. So there's going to be a video. Really be a part of the show when you come on these trips with us, because why not record content and episodes when we are actually in these places? So that is probably the biggest sneak peek.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. I mean, that's the big enchilada, right?
That is the big enchilada. So that's the big goal. We've discussed other things. Like we have some more t-shirt campaigns coming in partnership with other foundations. That's going to be wonderful. The Rhino Conservation Campaign did so well. We've also talked about having a subscription too. So if people want to pay a couple dollars a month to help keep the show on the airwaves, because as of now, I have not monetized it at all. So this has all been out of my pocket now for 2 years. So it's time, if this wants to get bigger and we want to actually financially support the people doing amazing things around the world, I just got to turn it into a real business. And so that's one of the ways. And so just to give you all more value, more content, we've been talking about possibly doing like a simple subscription model. So the live, like the free version will always stay the same. Like this.
Yeah. We're not going to take anything away from anybody, but we will add some value. Yeah.
Exactly. not taking anything away, just if for anyone who might want to just throw a couple bucks to the show, we will gladly give you as much value as possible for your amazing contribution. Did I forget anything? Is that
no? I mean, I think that's what we got, right?
Yeah, I feel like those are the big things. So
that was super fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But everyone who's listening, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of the show, for logging on, listening wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribing, supporting the show however you like, and interacting with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things, and just helping keeping these stories on the airwaves. So again, I've met the most amazing people through this show, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you. So thanks for listening to me for 100 episodes.
Yes. Thanks for letting me interview you. It was fun.
Thanks.
And thanks everyone for your questions. Those were really great. Let's see, Adrienne, Tropical Tropics 95, and Lori Evans Photography.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So appreciate it. Hey, thanks again for listening to this episode of Rewildology. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button to never miss a future episode. Do you have a cool environmental organization, travel story, or research that you'd like to share? Let me know at rewildology.com. Until next time, friends, together we will rewild the planet.